All right, everybody. So we're going to do this lecture a little bit differently because it's a little bit more complex than just having a PowerPoint up. So the PowerPoint that we're going over, this literature review guidelines, is probably the most important one of the semester, the single most important one. Because while many classes, the goal of it is to get you knowledge and information, which is fine and good, the main purpose of this class, in my mind, is to be able to write a literature review in a developmental context. So we're going to spend a decent amount of time going over some what are probably going to be too many details for you at first. You might not quite understand what you're getting into. But this is what I want the majority of your time outside of listening to lectures and using the discussion boards to be. I want you to spend a lot of time on this. So you can go through the PowerPoint that is online, and here's the basis of it. So by the end of the semester, you have one 5-page paper due that is based off of a minimum of 5 empirical or review articles. And these must be journal articles, academic journal articles, not websites, not newspaper articles. They must be science. I'm going to show you how to find them in a little bit. Additionally, you have to have a 1-page bibliography for each of them. Now, this is not like any other bibliography you've done. Do not Google how to do a bibliography or annotated bibliography or anything for this. Just do what I ask you to do. It should be really, really easy. Most of the time, people are concerned about this. They shouldn't be. As long as you get the basics there, you're good. And the basics are just a summary of some of the critical parts, and then comparison to course material or other articles as well. I allow that. Then there are 2 other sources I want you to find that you thought about using but you decided not to use, and just have a sentence for describing why they weren't chosen. And we'll talk more about how that article comes up here in a minute. So the first thing to talk about, though, is topics. And I'm keeping this PowerPoint just as I would in the fall or spring semester, because I want you guys to see what I ask for people in the fall or spring, because you have a little bit of an added issue, let's just say, in that we're not meeting face to face, at least not necessarily. I will be in my office from time to time, and we can meet if you are so able to, and we can do virtual office hours where we can Skype or FaceTime in or something like that. But nonetheless, you are at a relative disadvantage, primarily from a time perspective. You've got to get this done a lot quicker than a student will typically have to during the semester. So topics. Your topic can be anything as long as it is developmental. I don't care what it is. And the reason that it is so broad is that it has to be interesting to you. I and many of my colleagues, other people who got their PhDs with me, we didn't think of what we were doing for our degrees as work because we really liked it. It's like if you ever read a book that you are really interested in, that's not really work, right? It's enjoyable. Conversely, if you don't like your topic, you're going to hate writing this because you're going to spend hours and hours thinking about this, reading articles, writing up your paper. So if you don't like what you're doing, you're going to hate this. Now, I also say try to think of things we've gone over this semester that you found interesting. That is true for some of the developmental perspectives, but a lot of it is going to be stuff we haven't done yet. So you could do it on autism, religion, peer relations, anything that you are interested in, even if we haven't talked about it, even if it's not on the syllabus. Now, if you can't think of a topic, I say come talk to me, email me, or you can come talk to me if you are able to. So how do we come up with this topic? Let's get a little bit more detail. So what to do, first of all, what are just some things you spend a good deal of time thinking or caring about? That would be a good place to start. I've said before, the reason that I am so interested in psychology of religion and spirituality is it's something that I've thought about a lot over time. What does it mean to be religious and spiritual? Well, I can take that and do some scientific work on it based on my interests. So if you spend a lot of time on Facebook, well, there is a lot of really interesting work out there about Facebook. If you're an athlete, how the development of leadership on sports teams, people have done papers like that before. So, two, create some quick hypotheses about these things. So, let's say it's Facebook. Maybe you say people substitute real life friendships for Facebook friends. There we go. Three, write them down. Then, what are the variables? And search the library for these terms. So, for this Facebook example, let's say you are interested in Facebook, you think that people substitute Facebook for real life friendships, then what are the variables here? Well, social networks, Facebook. Social anxiety might be the reason they're substituting it in. Peers. Well, if you search Facebook substitution, if you search social networks, social anxiety, and friendship, you could search the library website and see what they find. So if we do this was a while ago I did this, put those three in. First thing, social networks is a basis for friendship selection and socialization in adolescent social networks. And I swear to God, I didn't manipulate this in any way. This was the first thing that came to my mind when I was making this PowerPoint. I was actually surprised it worked so well. But there you go. Any topic you want, you can do it in a similar way as this. And as I said before, the topics are flexible. I really want you to enjoy what you are writing as best you can and get relatively deeply involved in this. Again, this is the biggest single thing that will come from this semester is going to be this paper. And it also is something that you will be able to use later on. I can't tell you how many students have come back and said to me when I just run into them on campus, they say, well, Dr. Longo, I really hated your paper, but it actually made writing my other papers in other classes easier. Seriously, I had many, many people say that. And I'm not going to lie, parts of this are really going to suck. But it's important that you're able to do this. So again, sorry about that email. Notice topics are flexible, development of leadership in athletics, prejudice and mental health, brain development, substance use, schizophrenia and family relations, emotional abuse and social development, online social networks and adolescent depression, peer influences on delinquency, anything like that will work. So articles, you are going to have to find articles for this to work. You must know how to find them. So here we go. I'm going to walk through this with you. I'll show you in my window how to do it, but I also give you in pretty decent detail how to do it. So I'm going to slide this to the side now and pull this up. If you come to, this is just the website there. If you click on P and then go to Psych Articles, as we say there, then you will hit Choose Databases, and then Academic Search Premier, Psych Articles, and Psych Info. I want you to click that. Psych Articles is there. Hit OK. Click OK. Enter the search terms, and then PDF full text. So if we want to do social networks, social anxiety, and peers, search. There you go. We have 58 articles that came from that. And then you can go through, and this is going to be what probably most of the time that you are going to spend. There are going to be two big things that you spend a lot of your time on. The first is finding articles, and the second will be reading the articles. So let's say you search for some articles. Well, we have a ton of different ones in here that you can choose from. You will have to decide that. How you do that? Well, we're going to get to that shortly. So you need to make sure that when you are searching that you change your fields. So when select a field, you can pick for authors, in the texts, subjects, etc. And you can use synonyms. This is an important one because if you put in social networks and the author who wrote the article didn't use the term social network, but instead just used Facebook, well, let's see. If we change and put Facebook instead of 58, now we only get 4. That's why it's good to use the variable that it is talking about. So it's not just Facebook, it's a social network. If you use social networks instead of Facebook, you get 58 of them. So synonyms, pure attachment, and pure relations, big 5. You could also look for introversion, etc., etc. So when searching for specific articles, if you're doing that, don't use the full names of articles. That means that if instead you're going to be looking up an article's title, let's say that you found the name of, ooh, that was interesting. I'm not sure why it did that. Let's say you want to search for this article. When you are searching, you don't want to put all of the terms in. I don't know why it is, but it just doesn't work as well. So I would maybe take out, let's see, there. It worked out that time. But sometimes you won't be able to find them that way. So taking out non-essential words can be helpful. Okay, another way that you can do this is just going to the library website, then finding psych articles in this different way. We have our example of psychology and religion in the PowerPoint. Good. Now let's talk about empirical articles. We need to understand what empirical articles are, what they do. And this one, I've never looked at this article before. I'm just going to show you how to use it. So there are all of these different areas in an empirical article, and we're going to take them in turn. So an abstract is a short summary of the article. It gives an overview of it with main points from each section. This is the abstract in this case. It's almost always the first thing that comes after the title and the authors. Excuse me, I thought I had an example there. It's going to come after that. It's short, gives an overview of it. That would be like reading a cliff note of a book, though. It can tell you something about it, but there's no way, look at how long this article is. There's no way that something that short can tell you all of the information in there. I'm going to tell you how to use them in a little while, but just to let you know what parts of the article there are. So abstract. The introduction. It's generally speaking not labeled, and it's the first text after the abstract. This is the beginning of the introduction. And this gives a lot of background on your article. It gives the conceptual framework, it gives hypotheses, it tells you theories from past work, it tells you the past research that has been done that has looked at this phenomenon before. It is, as I say in here, one of the longer parts, and for you, one of the more important parts. You will probably get a decent amount of the work that you use for your literature review is going to come from introductions. The method is almost always labeled as such, method. It is going to give you information about the sample, the population from which they drew, the method, how they actually collected the data, and then the measures. So here is the sample and the data analysis. This tells you there's 758 undergraduate students, how many males, how many females. Then measures. They have next, and I suppose, okay, this also tells you here a little bit about the methodology, how they actually got the data. Some of the information you're going to be able to handle, demographic information, number of men, number of women, etc., you're going to be able to understand. Some things you're probably not going to be able to do. If they say there was a 2x2x3 factorial design, you don't need to know that. If you can't handle the information from the method, that's not, it's okay. I just want you to read it to get a sense of what you do know and what you don't know. Then the results give you the statistical results. This is the part that you're probably going to understand the least about, and that is 100% okay. It can be frustrating, but this is not a stats class, and many of you will not have had a stats class yet, so I don't expect you to understand it. The tables and figures can be good. The statistics summary that we did, it wasn't on day one for this class, but we talked about correlation and a few others, and so you will be able to understand some of that here. Now, the major information from the results are also summarized in the discussion, so that's good. But I still would like you to give the results section a try, because the more you read it, the better you're going to get. So you can see here we have preliminary results on Facebook use, perceived informativeness, etc., etc. Well, down here it talks about what the aim of the studies were and what the results found. It's a short summary of what the results were, but it gives you in kind of English what they found in the results. The discussion reviews the study. It'll start off with summarizing the results. It'll look at different hypotheses. It'll evaluate the study, say some of the limitations, some of the positives, some of the negatives about the study, recommendations for what to do in the future, and how there could be any kind of application. So there are different types of sources that you will find. This one that has the introduction, method, results, discussion, that is an empirical article. Everything I've told you so far is about empirical articles. You could also find some that are review articles. Review articles are basically giant introductions. They are essentially lit reviews. They are 30 pages typed of what you are going to be doing. So what they will do, these review articles will not do studies. They will not actually conduct studies. Instead, what they will do is they'll take the results from other studies and kind of aggregate it and figure out, or try to figure out what the general trends are over time. You can use those as well. Empirical articles and review articles are both okay to use. Review articles are particularly good to get theories from, if you want to do that. Then chapters and edited books. Sometimes when you're searching the library, there will be chapters that pop up, so it could almost look like a textbook chapter. You can use them, but I would not suggest that you do. And you also might find some books that look interesting. I'll tell you that for the last paper that I put out, I read several books just to get a couple sentences on it. That is way beyond the scope of what you're looking for. For the purposes of this, you do not need to read a book. If you are going to read a book for this project, you are way overshooting how difficult this should be. So how are we going to read them? Well, let's go in reverse order. Books, you're not going to read them, right? I appreciate the effort. Don't do it. Chapters and edited books, there's so many different types of edited books, it's hard for me to give you an idea of how to read them. So that really turns to the two main ones that I've told you are the way you're going to be using articles. So review journal articles, because there's no method, no results, no discussion, you're going to read it fairly differently. You're going to be looking for, instead, for key themes. What are the key variables? Important things that things that the authors say are important. That to you should have some bells go off and say, hey, if they're saying these things are important in what I'm looking at, then maybe I should take another look at it. So it's pretty much a giant introduction section, but in much more detail. And another thing that you can do when you are in an introduction section, both in an empirical article or just throughout the review article, is let's say you're reading this, and in September 2015, Facebook, the world's most popular social network, 1.5, let's say you want to find where this was. Well, it's Alexa 2015. You can slide down to the references and find that article. Okay, that didn't work out as well as I had hoped that it would, because this is a website. I'm unsure how they got it from. But any of these articles you can find. And so this is an article, why do people avoid advertising on the internet? Maybe you're interested more in advertising. You can look up any of these articles and try to find them. Some of them we don't have access to, but that's another way that you can use empirical article introductions and review articles to help you out. Remember, you have to find 7 total articles and use 5, so that can be a good way. And then finally, empirical articles. What are you going to do? Well, if we think about this as a multiple step process, the first step into finding an article that you're actually going to use is to simply search on on PsycArticles or Google Scholar. We'll talk about in a little bit. So this is the first thing you do, and the first check you'll do is look at the introduction. Some things might be interesting to you. Some of them might be less interesting. So let's go back to our social networks, social anxiety, and peer relations. Well, here, early childhood behavioral inhibition, adult psychopathology, and the buffering effects of adolescent social networks, a 20-year prospective study. Maybe that, for whatever the reason, doesn't sound good to you. It shows up in your results, but I'm unsure if that's what I want. Well, you can move down a little bit further. I will tell you, stay away from dissertations and theses. These are articles that have not been published, so you don't want to do that. But let's say number 3, social network is a basis for friendship selection and socialization in adolescent social network. Well, maybe that one looks good. You can click on the PDF for the full text, and here you go. So the first thing you're going to do is go by the title. The second thing you are going to do when you're reading an empirical article is read the abstract, because a title can be misleading. So you read the article's title, you say, that sounds interesting, let me read the abstract. So then you read the abstract, and you can say, do I really want to spend the 20 minutes, half an hour that it's going to take to read this article in a whole lot of depth? So this second level of screening will let you see if you want to go further and spend a lot of time, or if you do not. Then let's say you read the abstract and you say, yes, I really do want to do this. Well, depending on how your computer works, you can click on it if you have a Mac this way. This is how you download it, and you can save it to your desktop. Any of these articles where their PDF is there, it is free for you to do that. The university has paid for our access to these journals, so you can do it. But if you say, oh, I don't want this article, then just go back and say, okay, you're out. What about this one? Do it again. You've read the title, looks interesting, then read the abstract. If it sounds interesting, then maybe you save it and come back to it later. Maybe you don't. Then, once you have some articles you're interested in looking at, and you can even do this one at a time if you really want, just read the introduction. You'll get a decent idea from the first paragraph or two if you want to spend more time getting into this. But you want to read the introduction first to get an idea of all of the things that it has to offer for you. And then, if you want to keep going, do it. And take good notes on it. For the method, the results are going to be a little harder. The discussion and introduction are really the two sections that you want to read. Okay, so now let's say that you're happy with your topic, yay, and your articles, yay. Now what do you have to do? Well, if I were you, I would write the bibliographies. The syllabus has more detail. We're going to go over that a little bit more. But in essence, it's just summarizing all of the parts that you have previously read and comparing them to other studies and things we have talked about this semester. But once you have those bibliographies down, we're moving to the outline. And I swear, this is one of the most amazingly true things that I will tell you all semester, is that it's really hard for people to write a good lit review without outlining. I always hated outlining before I got a little bit into college because I just thought it was a waste of time. But now I see how important it is. How are you going to outline? Well, what are the main things you've learned from reading your articles? What are the takeaway? The most important thing that I will tell you of this entire lecture is that the way that I want you to write is as though you were sent to Washington, D.C., you were called there, and you were asked by the president to basically say, tell me about social networking. I want to learn about the science behind it. Well, what would you do? Would you say, well, Smith and Johnson found this, and Johnson and Smith found this? No. They would say, wait, just tell me what's important. That is your job in this article. Your paper is not about articles. It is about the phenomena you are covering. So what are the main takeaway points? If you had to summarize all of the articles together, well, this is very important for us. So if you are having an issue doing this, I would go to Excel. I do this, honest to God. I do this every time I do it. I have different columns. First column is the authors, so I can find the article that I have saved. I'll write down the hypotheses or the main ideas, any variables that are important, key findings, theories. You can have any number of columns you want. And then do it for all of your articles. And this is important, especially for me, because I have a hard time remembering what article told me what. So outlining articles, highlighting them, doing summaries like this is really important to me. But then once you have read them, you can come back and you can try to find commonalities. So these red ones, church attendance and attendance. This different color, reddish, says prayer and prayer. These two studies were longitudinal. All four of them looked at happiness. What about the theories? This RCF, I made this up, by the way, RCF theory in 3 of them and not there. So then you can start to build your idea of what is it that you really found from this. Well, we can see that the RCF theory was supported when measuring attendance, and no support when prayer was used as the variable. So there was no support when prayer, and prayer didn't do RCF theory. So the RCF theory was found when it was attendance and attendance. So that is point 1 that you've got, and point 2. So our thesis for your paper, support is found for the RCF theory of religion when religion is measured at attendance but not prayer. This sounds complicated, but I promise it's not as complicated as it sounds. If you're willing to take time to read through the articles, you're willing to do something like this that helps organize your thoughts, because again, I know there are so many things that you're going to be reading. It's going to take a while for you to do this, and it's complicated, and many of you will not have read empirical articles before. But if you give this a shot, I promise it will help. So then we outline. So we have our introductory paragraph that you'll have in everything, and we have our kind of thesis at the end of it. Support is found for the RCF theory when religion is measured as attendance but not prayer. Then you can have a section where you have an overview of it and information from 3 of your articles to describe the theory. Even though the second article might not have been significant, remember if we go up here, Article 2 was looking at prayer, but it still talks about the theory, so you could talk about that article and the theory there anyway. Then you could have a section on measurement of religion. What is the difference? And you can use information from all 3 of the articles because all of them measure religion. And then section 3, the findings from them. Well, why is there support for some of them? Why is there not? And then a conclusion. Notice in here that when we are outlining this, none of the bullet points in here are summary of an article. And that is why we have the bibliographies. The bibliographies are meant to be summaries, so you can see that what you summarize in your bibliography, the way you summarize it, should not be the way that you summarize it in your empirical, or in your literature review. Excuse me. So this PowerPoint isn't enough. Now, it says on here, come to class and ask questions about your paper. Well, you can't really do that because you're not coming to class. But this means that you need to email me with questions, as many questions as you have. And it might even work better if you were to plan out a Skype or FaceTime or whatever session with me so we can go over it in a little bit more detail, a little bit more personally. The second point is read the brief writing guidelines for psychology courses that I put on Canvas. This is something that applies to all of your classes. I had other psychology faculty look at that, and all of them agreed with every one of the points on there. The third one, come to office hours. Again, I'm going to have online office hours, but it's going to be important for you, as I said in point one, to get in contact with me in whatever way can work best for us. And I cannot overstate this enough. The earlier you start, the better you do. I promise you. Because if you need to find 3 articles, how well are you going to be able to find 3 articles, read them all, then write up your paper the night before it's due? You're not. I really think you should schedule this. You should put on your calendar when it's due. If I were you, I'd want to have the paper done and ready for editing a week before it's due. And the final paper is due at the end of the semester. The draft, that is 3 pages, is due early in the semester. We'll talk more about the due dates for those of you who are really concerned about those. Those are on the syllabus, and send me an email with any kinds of questions you have. But this is not the type of thing that you should be, in other PowerPoints, I would understand if you say, I don't really understand this, I don't really like this as much, I'm not going to pay as much attention. I don't think that you should do that, but I can understand. With this literature review, if you don't do it, if you don't do well on it, you are not going to pass the class. You really need to do well on this. So take advantage of me saying, come talk to me. I'm not actually teaching, I'm not giving lectures because they're video recorded, right? So I have a lot of time this summer to talk with you, to meet with you, to do whatever you need. I can't emphasize that enough. The people who tend not to like this assignment are those who wait until the last second. Okay, so if you have any questions, please email me. Let me know as soon as you can, and if there are specific questions about this lit review guideline, then please put them in the discussion after that.